Recovery Sort of is a podcast where we discuss recovery and addiction topics from the perspective of people living in long-term recovery. This podcast does not intend to represent the views of any particular group, organization, or fellowship. The views expressed here are solely the opinion of its contributors. Be advised there may be strong language or topics of an adult nature.
Welcome back. It's Recovery Sort of. I'm Jason. I'm a guy in long-term recovery.
And I'm Billy. I'm also a person in long-term recovery.
And so we're here today, obviously, first episode of October. It's time to talk about Step 10, 10th step, however you'd like to say it. I always wonder when I'm writing out the titles, I'm like, should I write it in numerals? Should I write Step 10? Should I write 10th step? Should I write TENTH step? I'm like, oh my God, I overthink everything. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I wouldn't care how I wrote it. It would just have to be the same throughout every episode.
Well, and that's what I end up doing. I go back and I look and I'm like, well, what did I do last time? Because I don't remember. But I guess I'm always trying to figure out, like, what are people going to search for more? Like, which version is said most often? And I really don't know. Step 10?
I would think step space 10, like STEP space 10.
And then there's step space TEN. So then there's that. Like, do people like? I don't know.
Nobody does that. Right. Non-Americans probably spell it out.
Those bastards.
American people just use the number keypad.
I'm gonna ask our British friends. I'm gonna say, what do you guys spell it out, or how do you do that over there? Yeah. So we got recognized, and I did not pass this on to you yet, so I will now. We got recognized on Twitter. They were doing for Recovery Month, like a recovery hero every day. And shouting somebody out for that, does good in the recovery community. And we got recognized for putting the effort we put into the podcast. And
nice.
You know what's crazy? It is nice, but it's like every day when they did that, I was like, oh, that's so cool for that guy, right? Like I've seen him around. He does always respond to newcomers on Twitter, or he is really friendly, or I've talked to him, or they wrote a book and they're awesome, right? And then as soon as the word hero gets thrown around in my direction, I'm like, I don't know about all that, right? Like, that less than feeling every time. It crept in instantly. I thought it was super sweet for everybody else. And then for me, it was like, I don't know about hero. That's a little much.
Yeah. Well, is that for so Jason does most of the Twitter stuff. I occasionally get on there and read or look at stuff. But is that for your replies and comments to people?
No, that was for the podcast itself. And when I commented, thank you, They definitely made acknowledgement of Billy and said,
thank you.
That definitely includes Billy too. And I, gladly will share that with you.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate your efforts in the social media stuff. It helps.
Yeah, it's cool sometimes. Sometimes it's a little busy and hectic, but that's all right. So just to get into the 10th step, you might say, especially if you have not worked one yet, or if you are not in a program at all, what the hell is the 10th step, right? And so continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. And so, we did 1 through 3. We talked about our powerlessness. We talked about hopefully something bigger than us can help us be restored to sanity one day. We turn our will and our life over to the care of this bigger power. We get into 4 and 5, and we talk about, a good look at ourselves and what's really going on, and where our actions don't line up with the things we think we're supposed to be doing. And 5, well, why is that? Why don't they line up? Well, because we're terrified of life and of people, and, we might look bad. And then 6 and 7, we look at, oh man, all these different ways that comes out sideways, right? These pieces of our character that are defected, that act in abundance, too much at the wrong time. And then 7, the realization that, like, we're not going to remove those defects of character, and hopefully something else can help us. And then 8 and 9, we're talking about all the harms we've done and cleaning up that. And so we kind of finish up with our our history assessment at that point and move into the present, where we want to keep these things we have, which I gotta say, I've always found it weird, and I don't know how you feel about this. Like, we do a 10, 11, and 12, which are like the maintenance steps, right? They're the steps that keep us so that we don't have to work as thorough, I guess, of a 4 through 9 the next time through. But they always, like, we're working the next time through anyway. Like, you're supposed to keep going with the steps and work them again. So why do we have these 3 at the end to keep?
So I can say I think that's, I don't know, unique to all of NA, the reworking of the steps, but I know not every program does that, or I know not everyone believes that you keep going back and working the steps over and over again.
Really?
I know in other 12-step practices, you go through the steps, and then you go into the maintenance, and 10, 11, and 12, like, so the idea is you've now, by working the previous steps, gained all the tools to build a better life. Now through 10, 11, 12, you put all those tools into action and live that better life. You're taking all those tools of, you know, acknowledging your defects, taking ownership of your faults, you know, making amends when necessary. You're taking all those things and now applying them into everyday life, what we talk about in 12.
So do you think that works, like, without working the rest of the other 9 over and over again? You think you can just stay in 10, 11, and 12 and stay okay?
For me, or for...
I don't know. Sure.
I mean, okay, so I'm going to give myself an easy out and say there's never a one-size-fits-all to anything.
The easy out.
Just because someone worked through the all 12 steps 5 times doesn't mean their understanding or application of the principles is better than somebody that worked them once, formally.
Right.
You know, so it's not the quantity of work that we do, it's the quality of the work. If you're actively addressing, I mean, when you read through the 10th step, because I just did before we came on, in the basic text, you know, it really talks about, you know, addressing your defects and making amends when necessary and doing all those things that we took, in my case, years to do, you know, up to the point of a 10th step. Now it's like, all right, now take all that shit, and instead of trying to take years to do it, start living that way every day. Every day, you know.
You don't read the 10th step every day?
No.
No, so I'm just sitting here thinking, I've always been a fan of, like, you know, continuously working them. I think for me, 10, 11, and 12 are great, but I almost need like a whole wipe the board clean. You've dealt with that layer and aspect of your life. Now let's look at how this is manifesting in other ways in your life, right? Like, so the first time through, maybe I just worked it almost all about drugs, right? And so after 12, it's kind of like, okay, let's wipe that off. Now, how's the disease look in your life, right? Let's really go back to square one and look at this all over again fresh. Well, now you use it with women, right? Now you're using it with food or the gym or gambling. And so I almost feel like I need to go through over and over again. I always have up until now, but now I'm sitting here wondering, maybe if I didn't put so much effort into reworking them, maybe I could do a better 10, 11, and 12 and be
Focus
okay.
more on, your daily application of principles
Right.
rather than a formal working of each step.
I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah, and I've heard, not that you shouldn't work them more than once. Obviously, I don't know that once is enough. I don't know how many times is enough. But, I know, my wife is now 30 years clean, and her sponsor has a few more years, and she doesn't just keep working through the steps and then go back and work them again and go back and work them again. I think if I have this right, she's been through them 4 times. And she is going to get ready to start. She said she's ready to start and go back and go over them again, but probably for the last 6 or 7 years, she's just been, her sponsors had her on a maintenance of 10, 11, 12. That's what we do. And she could explain more of what that means and looks like in her life, but she hasn't actively been, quote unquote, on a step in a number of years.
And she had the nerve to call me out about my anniversary.
In fairness, she has been through them a couple of times. So.
Right.
And she's good. And again, for her, that's important to her. Like, she feels like now it's not anything her sponsor told her to do. She's just like, yeah, I think I'm ready to go back through them again. And so she wants to do it again. So she falls heavily into your camp, your, course of belief. And when her sponsor actually first told her that, she was kind of like, wait, what? She had never done that in 20 plus years of recovery. It was always, you're on a step. And then she got this advice from her sponsor and said, well, maybe I'll try it and see what happens.
I took a little break in between a set of step work. First, I was going to work the traditions, and then I kind of did most of them with a guy, and it just sort of fell through. It wasn't all that interesting, honestly. And it wasn't with my sponsor because he had never worked the tradition, so I went somewhere else and tried it, and I think I got through 8 or 9, and it wasn't as informative as I was hoping it would be. It was pretty basic information that I felt I already got just from reading the chapters. I was like, I don't know. And then I just kind of set everything down for like 2-3 years. And yeah, my life got unmanageable. And so.
Well, so the trick is 10 doesn't mean we take a break. Quite the contrary.
I was taking a break.
Right. 10 isn't now we get to 10 and take a break, or, now we complete all 12 and then take a break. Like the idea of 10 is that's the daily one. Like we're supposed to be, actively engaged in self-reflection and self-discovery and, taking ownership of our wrongs on a daily basis.
And I think, so that's what I think. So if we're talking to Earthlings right now, right? And we say, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. This isn't like, it sounds kind of funky the way they say it, continue to take personal inventory. Like, this is like looking at your actions without you in the way. This is looking at my actions without me trying to justify all of them, right? Because I feel like that's generally what I do in my life is I live, I do things, and then I'm like, well, I did that because, right? And this is without any of that justification. How do you really feel about that? How would you feel if somebody else did that? How would you feel if your partner did it to you? How would you feel if your kids live like that? Would you have a good view of them? Like, this is something I honestly just don't think many people in the world do. I feel like we just live, and I was really thinking about this today. All these people with the politics and the Facebook and wherever they're at. And I don't think there is any self-reflection at all. I think we just have this I'm right attitude, and we're, blinders on, straightforward. Everything I do is justifiable because I'm right and you're wrong. And that's just the way it is. I can treat you like shit. I can talk about you badly. You believe in a different candidate. You must be an idiot. It's like, I just don't think we have any self-reflection, and it blows my mind, but I totally understand because like you said, when I'm taking a break, I'm not really, I can say right now, I've worked a 10 step a few times. I can't tell you that every day or even half the days I really sit down with the intent of looking at my actions.
Yeah, and I think that's what the difference is between actively living in 10, 11, 12 and trying to do that maintenance steps and taking a break.
Right. So do you regularly like sit with the intent of just looking at what you've done for the last day or two?
Somewhat. So I'll say not nearly as thorough as I probably should. There has been times in my life where in the NA fellowship, there's an IP. It's IP number 10. It's living the program. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And that has, the 10-step inventory kind of in it.
That is lengthy.
And there have been times I actually kept it on my phone, and there's been months of time where every night I would just go through that. And I didn't write it down, but I've heard people say you should write it down. I didn't write it down. I pulled it up on my phone, and I just went through and answered the questions in my head. It was more almost like a prayer type thing at the end of the night. Like I wanted to actively go through my day and see, how am I feeling? What am I doing? What am I thinking? Where am I at? And that was very beneficial. I think I had a lot of just growth or, noticing certain things about my behavior or attitude or, man, I've said that I am in a bad mood for a lot of days in a row now, things like that. Now, currently, most nights I lay down when I go to sleep, or before I go to sleep, I'm going to use the word prayer really loosely, but I do kind of say like a gratitude prayer.
Right.
And I will kind of look through my day and think, you know, did I cause any harm today? Is there anybody I hurt? Is there anything I regret? You know, is usually kind of how that goes. And then I go into, all right, so these are the things I'm grateful for. You know, my wife, my recovery, my kids, you know, my family.
Right. So I like to think that as I get better, I don't want to call it the moral compass, but I'm more in tune with what is right for me. And so I just notice throughout the day if I walk away from an interaction with my, kids where I feel like I was just a little harsher than I needed to be, like it's obvious, right? It sticks right out to me. I don't have to like think too hard about it, but I tend to fall into this, I guess, lazy-ish behavior of like, oh, I'll know it when it hits me, so I don't have to really actively look for it, right? And so my buddy Jack brought this up to me. It doesn't say continued to take personal inventory, and if we were wrong, promptly admitted it. It says when, right? Like this is going to happen. And so I would say if you walk around and you haven't been wrong for a few days, maybe you're not looking, right? Like, because chances are you have been in somewhere.
And that was part of that living the program IP, and I learned a lot from doing that because, that was part of it. It's like, what did I do right today? What did I do wrong today? And it's like I'm not perfect, so every day I'm done something wrong.
I was going to save it for later, but since we're there, I have it pulled up. So it says, am I clean today? How have I acted differently? Did my disease run my life, and how? What did I do today that I wish I had not done? What have I left undone that I wish I had done? Was I good to myself, and how? Was today a good day? Was I happy? Was I serene? Did I talk to my sponsor? Did I attend a meeting? Did I share my experience, strength, and hope? Who are the people in my life that I trust? Who has trust in me? Did I read from our literature? What steps did I consciously work? Did I admit my powerlessness? Was I able to put my trust in a higher power? What did I learn about myself? God, I'd have been asleep by now. Did I make amends? Did I make any amends today? Do I owe any? Did I admit fault to anyone today? Did I worry about yesterday or tomorrow? Can I accept myself as I am? Did I feel like I was part of humanity today? Did I allow myself to become obsessed by anything today? Holy shnikes, there's more. What has God given me to be grateful for? Have I done anything to cause harm to myself or another? What was it? Am I willing to change? Did I pray or meditate? How did this affect my life? You literally answered this every night, and we're not done.
Yeah.
What spiritual principles have I been able to practice? Was the most important thing in my life staying clean? Have I given of myself today without expecting anything in return? Was there fear in my life? Did I feel intense joy? We're almost there, people. Did I call or visit someone in the program? Did I pray for the well-being of another? Was I happy? Didn't they already ask that? Definitely asked about peaceful or something. Have I been peaceful today? I swear they asked that already.
There's a couple of them that are repeats.
Did I consciously remember that I have a choice today? And that's the last one, thank God.
Yeah, so if you look at, they're broken into sections. It does it in kind of little sections.
Oh, yeah, like the just for today.
Right. So each of those sections applies to that part of my life. And if I remember it right, because I didn't pull it up that quick, it was like myself and then others or something like that.
Yeah, that's a lot to answer every day, especially if you're writing it. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, the writing always seemed like a lot. But like 3/4 of that are kind of yes or no answers. You know what I mean? Did I go to a meeting today? Yes or no. Did I call my sponsor today? Yes or no. Like I wasn't looking for a bunch of justifications and rationalizations of my behavior to myself. It wasn't like I needed to go, well, did I go to a meeting? No, but I thought about it and I was going to go, but then the kids and the wife, like I didn't do all that. I just said, did I attend a meeting today? No. Did I call my sponsor today? Yes. Yeah, or no, whichever applied. Right. And I just answered them that way. And then that's another thing about like meetings and sponsor. Like you start to realize, shit, I've been saying no to like talking to my sponsor a lot of days now. Like and it starts to weigh on you. And it's like, man, maybe I just need to make that phone call. Maybe I need to get to a meeting.
I gotcha. That's, for me, I guess, I feel like this is one of those things where I'll do it thoroughly for a time, like if it's an assignment or my life's unmanageable, I'll be like, yeah, I'm going to pick that up and do that. That'll be great for my recovery. And then 3 weeks in, I just find myself phoning it in. I'm like, nope, yep, sure, yep, all right, bedtime.
Yeah.
Like,
and there was definitely some times that happened. You know, it's
Right.
definitely times it happened. But it's like prayer or anything else. If I work it in, or meditation, you know, I meditate pretty regularly. Some days it's good. Some days I'm phoning it in, you know,
Right.
but I still do it, and I still get the benefits of doing it, even if I'm just phoning it in.
it's funny you say meditation, because that's just what I was thinking of too, is that this kind of reminds me of a meditation in a way, in the sense that like, I just can't say enough how important I think it is, and yet I don't do it anywhere near as often as I'd like. Right?
That's
Like
why you
this-
got to go back and do the steps again.
there
There's
you
still
go.
some level of self-hate.
Right. I just can't work this every day, so I just keep working them all.
Yeah.
I'll say this: everybody I know who stops working the steps, or who says, "Oh, I work them every time I go over them with a sponsee," they either use, even after many, many years clean, or they're just miserable old fucks. Honestly, like that's the two people I know who don't actively write steps today. They're
Yeah,
just
and-
not happy.
There is such an important part in the self-reflection piece. You know what I mean? Like, going over steps with sponsees is great. I've gained a lot of insight and stuff, but that doesn't tell me about myself. That we're not, most of the time, if I'm doing my job, we're not talking about my defects of character, you know, when we're going over a 6 step. We're getting into theirs, you
Right.
know, and I'm helping them with theirs. And I might share one or two, but it's not, I'm not going to turn that into my time for self-reflection, you know. I'm trying to listen and be attentive. And so this step, I think, is important for that. It's important for that self-reflection, to look at what I'm doing, how I'm acting, what's my attitude, what's my behavior.
Well, if you're not actively writing steps and working on yourself, you probably wouldn't have any trouble taking over your sponsee's step work time to talk about you.
That's probably true.
No, I don't know. It's interesting to me how these things fall by the wayside, even though they seem like such crucial parts of working towards being who I want to be on a daily basis. And yet it's just so easy to fall into that. My wife was the reason I was agitated the last week every day, or my kids are the reason I'm agitated because they do this or that, instead of ever looking at my part in these situations. I'll say one thing. It reminds me a lot of like living unconsciously. It's just that not being focused on yourself and your actions, right? Like not seeing reality clearly. And it kind of talked about that. I have a quote about that. We'll get into it, I'm sure, but it's just one of those, like, we tend to go back to that default when we're not paying attention, right? And 10th step seems to me kind of like hey, I know you spent half your day living in your resentments in your head, and then there was the other, 49% of the day you spent worried about the thing you got planned for next week. Let's just take this 1% of your day and bring you back to right here and now and look at what's going on.
Yeah, and doing any maintenance type things, recovery oriented or otherwise, is really difficult. Mm-hmm. I mean, things like, for me, it's been like I suffer from seasonal allergies. And over the years, I couldn't tell you how many times I deal with, like, I take allergy medication. I do it pretty regularly. Then I either run out, or I stop taking it, or we go away for a couple days and I don't take it. And then as soon as I stop, I'm done. I don't do it again for a couple of weeks. And then before I know it, I'm getting sinus infections and my eyes are itchy and I'm sneezing and coughing all the time. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? Like, how did I go from taking this every day because I feel good, to now I don't take it anymore and I'm suffering? Like, and I'm getting better at catching that transition, but I don't always see that transition until it's too late. And I think it's very similar with any of the maintenance kind of things, whether it's diet, exercise, prayer, meditation, working steps, which in this case would be this step. This is the one step that you're supposed to do on a daily basis. This is your, continuing to take a personal inventory. At least my understanding is this is what you do daily,
Right. So you just hit on another one of these quotes that I have. So let's go ahead and take our break, and then we'll come back and we'll get into our quotes.
This episode has been brought to you by Voices of Hope, Inc., a nonprofit grassroots recovery community organization located in Maryland. Voices of Hope is made up of people in recovery, family members, and allies. Together, members strive to protect the dignity and respect of those that use drugs and those in recovery by advocating for treatment, support resources, and mentoring. Please visit us at www.voicesofhopececilmd.org and consider donating to our cause.
All right, we're back. And so to get into our, basic text, the general reading that we do, which is where we've been pulling from for all these steps so far. So step 10 frees us from the wreckage of our present. If we do not stay aware of our defects, they can drive us into a corner that we can't get out of clean. And I pulled that out because if you've ever been to an NA meeting, and quite possibly any meeting anywhere ever, I think this is like a go-to saying. You talk about getting backed into a corner that you can't get out of clean, and here it goes. It comes from the 10th step. And I think this is interesting. And so I don't know that maybe the earthling people could relate to that. Like, they're not worried about, oh man, I better stay on top of how I'm living on a daily basis, because if not, I might go back to using. Like, no, you'll just go back to being an asshole probably, or doing something else. But I think that's what happens when we live. I'm looking at this step really as living consciously, as living here and now, actually being here physically, mentally, spiritually in the moment. And when I stop doing that, I run the risk of those unconscious programmed behaviors, whether it's programmed from nature or my upbringing. But I go back to that, and that's the same stuff that led me to feeling bad to begin with, that led me to use to escape it.
Yeah, so my understanding of addiction, is that it's a physical, mental, and spiritual disease, and, the spiritual aspect of that is my total self-centeredness. And the self-centeredness piece is like, I'm always thinking about myself first. How does this affect me? What is this going to do to me? How am I going to get what I want? Who's going to give me? What about me? And I don't put a lot of consideration into how I'm affecting other people around me.
Right.
So this work that I do in recovery helps me stay in position to not be so self-centered, to not be so caught up in myself, to try to think about other people. But left to my own devices, I resort back to that nature of self-centeredness.
Right. It's just like I was telling you outside. So my mother calls me this morning and wants to stop by my house to drop some stuff off because, I don't know if this is all mothers, but she's always got bags of stuff for me to bring to my house, which is, whatever. And so she's telling me about 4:30. I'm like, yeah, we're kind of busy during that time, but if you need to, sure, if you're just dropping stuff off. She's like, well, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll just wait till the weekend, but maybe we will. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So whatever. I make dinner. I'm getting the kids ready. I'm watching the baby. My wife's busy for a few minutes. And then 5:15, I'm like, dinner's coming out of the oven. It's like mixing up some mashed potatoes. And I'm right in the middle of that. And then she's here. And she's in my driveway, and I'm like, what the fuck, right? Here we go. I'm going to be late to record. I'm supposed to meet somebody at 6. It's 5:15. I haven't even eaten yet. And she had new puppies, and she got a new car. And she was showing them off to the kids, and she wanted to show me how cool and the updated technology in the new car, which was pretty fucking cool, by the way. But I just didn't have time for that shit, right? It was not the right time in my life. And so it's very easy for me in my life, like you said, to think about how everybody is affecting me. Like, you are fucking up my life, woman. Like, I got shit to do. This is not part of my plan. And there's many times in my life when I will act like a jerk in that situation and mad. Why'd you stop by? Blah, blah, blah. And thankfully today wasn't, right? Today was the day. It was like, I let her show me the puppies. I let her show me the cool stuff in her car. And then I also didn't let it really negatively impact my life. I said, hey, look, you guys are welcome to come in for dinner, or you can roll out, but I got to go in and eat. Like, this is what I need to do. And I just did what I needed to do. But I could have very easily rained all over her parade, or even worse, just shit on her parade, right? Like, get your fucking new car and your puppies out of here. I'm busy.
Right. I got shit to do.
Yeah. And she's just excited and trying to share with me. Right. And all I'm worried about is how this is affecting me. And it took me thinking every 5 seconds, Billy will be all right if I'm a couple minutes late. Like, it ain't going to be that big a deal, right? I'll eat this food. I'll be close to on time, right? Even driving up here, I want to get anxious when I'm driving, right? And I'm like, just fucking relax. You'll get there. It's okay.
And then he doesn't tell you. I sent him a text. I'm going to be like 5 minutes late.
Yeah. Yeah. I was.
So I just pushed the button a little further. But no, but that's the beautiful thing about recovery. Like, to me, that's a beautiful story of recovery, because we tend to sort of fall into this notion that, oh, I'm going to come in, I'm going to do this work, I'm going to work all these steps, and I'm going to turn into this spiritual person, and I'm going to be great in every aspect of my life. And that's just not reality. You know, the reality is I still have this sort of self-centered sickness at my core. And what the steps and this recovery teaches me to do, hopefully, is not to let that get the better of me, you know? And then, like, if I were you and that was the case, you know, I had a situation like that, like, I go home at night and think, man, I'm really grateful. You know, like, that's a moment to really be grateful for, because not only did you not cause additional harm to your mom, but you let that build some, like, intimacy and build into your life and your kids' lives and your family's lives. It probably made her feel good and special. And, you know, all these like we talked about last week, these little indirect benefits come from just not being an asshole.
Right.
You know, that's all it takes. Just don't be an asshole, and all these nice things happen around you.
I forgot to mention that my kids the whole time, can we have a puppy? Can we get a puppy?
Right.
Like 18 times in a row. I'm like, shut the fuck up. No, obviously no. We're not doing that.
She's got puppies. Go to her house.
Right, exactly. So the next one is, continuing to take a personal inventory means that we form a habit of looking at ourselves, our actions, attitudes, and relationships on a regular basis. And I don't think that needs a lot of explanation. It's just a pretty good definition of what it means. We form a habit of looking at ourselves, our actions, our attitudes, and relationships on a regular basis. And I think that's what it gets to later, too. It talks about the differences between some of these. Like, sometimes we feel different than we're living, and sometimes we're living different than we're thinking, and all these things are different. Like, the whole time that thing with my mother happened, I was not thrilled in my head, right? I'm like, this is fucking annoying. But it didn't matter, because that's not what I lived. And like, none of that's relevant. It was all just garbage that was going through my mind.
Right. And when you go home and lay down tonight in bed, you can feel good about the person you were versus feeling like shit. Now I have someone else to add to a list.
Right. Now I got to take her a card Saturday.
Right.
The next one is, we are creatures of habit and are vulnerable to our old ways of thinking and reacting. At times, it seems easier to continue in the old rut of self-destruction than to attempt a new and seemingly dangerous route. And I think this is what I was talking about earlier when I say, like, we revert back to that unconscious state, right? That state we were brought up in. I was just reading about it for a social work class this week. It's Bowen Family Systems Therapy, or Bowen Family Systems Theory, where he talks about, like, these attachments that we get in childhood, and we live these adult lives, and we're like, that has nothing to do with my parents, right? I'm grown up. I'm out of their house. My relationships since my adulthood have nothing to do with them. And if we really look at it, almost all the time, it's directly related to exactly what happened in our house and what we were lacking or getting too much of, or these maladaptive attachment patterns that we have.
Yeah. And, you know, for me, a lot of that stuff is, like, I react to life a lot of times just on instinct, on feeling and gut reaction.
Right.
And what I've learned is that doesn't serve me very well. Like,
right.
You know, shocker. Like, that's my problem with addiction. Like, fuck it. I want to go get high, so I'm just going to go get high. And I'll figure it out later, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll tend to live a lot of life like that. Like, well, this is how I feel in the moment, so this is just how I'm going to act, and I'll figure the rest out later.
There was an old Simpsons episode where, like, Chief Quimby or whatever, is it Chief Quimby? I don't know, whatever. The police chief was, like, riding around eating a donut in his underwear in the police car, and it was like, if you feel good, do it.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, that's how I live my life. It didn't work too well.
Right.
So part of it, this is a part of the questions in the basic text. It says, do we feel trapped? Are we setting ourselves up for trouble? Are we too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? That's halt. Are we taking ourselves too seriously? Are we judging our insides by the outside appearances of others? Do we suffer from some physical problem? And so 2 interesting points I thought in there. They point out the HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Like generally, those are things we got to look out for, because when we become too hungry, too angry, too lonely, or too tired, those are like warning signs. It's like alarm bells. It's like a smoke alarm for your, the disease of addiction. It's like you are not going to act right if you are feeling these things. And I can say for me, at least, if I'm too tired, too lonely, or too hungry, I'm already too angry too, right? Because I'm instantly angry by that. So I rarely feel one of those at a time. It's usually at least two.
Yeah, and I mean, just that I've learned, just at my job, for example, like I get busy and, it'll be around lunchtime and I don't eat. And then by like 12:30, 1 o'clock, like just anything anyone says is pissing me off. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. All this is that you're hungry. Why don't you take a break, go get something to eat, readjust your head, and stop, taking it out on everybody else? Like, and that's a result of recovery, like learning to take that inventory and look at, it's not just like I'm angry, so I'm allowed to be angry and treat anybody like I want. It's, well, I'm angry. Why is that? Why do I feel this way?
Right. When talking to my buddy Jack, he made sure to mention that, like, there's nothing wrong with feeling hungry or angry or lonely or tired. It's when we get too much of these feelings, right? We kind of delve out into left field and we start thinking we can use that to justify any of our actions. At least that's how I get. I can start thinking I'm so angry that anything I do right now will be justifiable because of the way I feel inside. And that's just not the case. And so it's not that it's like a problem to feel these emotions or these feelings. It's just we need to address them as we start feeling them so that they don't get out of proportion.
Right.
The other part of this that I really liked is, are we judging our insides by the outside appearances of others? And this is one of those I don't hear said too much anymore, but I think this is good for every person on Earth. And if you're living on Mars, there too, right? Like, I tend to look at people's outsides, right? The way they look to me, the little bit of their life that I know about, and I judge my thoughts and feelings by that. And so, and this, social networking has only confounded this, and compounded it like a billion times, right? It's made it that much more unclear, because I see these pictures and these people are going to Disney World with their kids and their super mom, and they're, the dad like plays catch with his son every night, and like everything's perfect. And I'm like, fuck, I don't even want to play catch with my son. That little bastard gets on my nerves, right? Like, he talks me to fucking death. And I'm like, there's something wrong with me. And so that's what happens. I can see people at a meeting or at the mall or whatever, and I'm like, oh, they seem so happy, right? I don't know what the fuck they're thinking. They might be miserable, right? And I just don't realize that people think the same about me. They're like, oh man, you've got your life all together. And I'm like, I don't fucking feel like it.
Right.
And so I can't judge the way I'm feeling internally or my internal thinking by what I see.
Yeah. Yeah, that's trouble. I mean, I definitely think we can fall into that. I would like to say I don't do that as much. I used to do that a lot more. Currently, I try to just balance like how I feel off of how I'm living myself,
Right.
So I try to stay there. That's a good lane for me to be in.
It was easier for me when I was doing more talking about it, because when I talk about me, like, and my internal insecurities and shortcomings and all that, other people generally are receptive and they, join the conversation and share about themselves as well. And I feel like without the in-person meetings, there's been less of that. And then, I mean, when I was in my internship, of course, I'm providing therapy for people. And so it's like, I'm hearing normal people all the time. And I'm like, oh, good. Thank God I'm normal too. Right.
Yeah.
But now without that, I actually found myself doing this today. I was having a conversation and I said something about how I'm kind of selfish in this area. And the response was, I think it's pretty human to be that way. And I'm like, fuck, it is. How did I miss that? I was like beating myself up over being a selfish guy. And I'm like, I guess that is pretty human to feel that way. I don't really live that way. So that's all right.
Yeah. And I think all of our feelings, I think, as, whether we're addicts or not, are normal human feelings. I think just as addicts, it's the self-centered part that gets us, into trouble. It's the fact that, like, when I'm sad, like, no one's ever been this sad,
Right.
you know, or if I'm angry, like no one's ever been this angry or wronged, you know.
Yeah.
How
it's,
dare they to me, you know, and it feels so intense.
Nobody knows.
Right.
Next one is the 10th step can be a pressure relief valve. We work this step while the day's ups and downs are still fresh in our minds. We list what we have done and try not to rationalize our actions. This may be done in writing at the end of the day. See, it says maybe, but that's a strong suggestion.
Yeah.
The first thing we do is stop. Then we take the time to allow ourselves the privilege of thinking. And I like that. I like that it says we don't rationalize our actions, because that's the first thing I do when I run through a list of anything I've done. I'm like, well, I did that because they were a dick to me, right? And I like that it says we need to stop and take the time to give ourselves the privilege of thinking. We need to be here. We need to be looking at it for what it is. Nothing, huh?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about the writing out that 10 step, and like, man, doing that every day would be a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And if I should do it. So I got caught in my own head, because I remembered hearing a lady share in a meeting that she had done that she says for years. She has notebooks of
Wow.
10 step written
Would you
down
keep it?
stuff.
I feel like you would burn it.
I can't do anything every day. I'm terrible at that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, of course, I say I can't. I've gotten good at it the last couple years.
I
meditation
guess
and stuff.
people journal every day, so
Yeah.
that's similar. It seems like it would be easier journaling. Maybe if I just glanced at the questions and kind of like answered some of them that seemed pertinent as I journaled. I just can't imagine just sitting down and writing like answers to questions every day. That seems meh. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not very interesting.
Well, and I mean, of course, it was me, so I like the way I did it. Just answering the questions, like, and trying to keep it fairly simple. And I think, you know, what it talked about in there is what I tried to do is, like, I tried not to, like, rationalize and justify and make a bunch of excuses for why I was or wasn't doing certain things. I just tried to answer the questions honestly.
I'm going to write it like, Dear Diary, I saw a cute boy today. I said hi. No. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it would be helpful. Maybe I do like video journals every so often, but they're not really with this purpose in mind, so I don't think I can count them, even though I'd love to count anything as getting credit. It's more for like, it's kind of morbid before when I die, so my kids will have like little check-ins from their life, like, hey. I know that's a little weird, but I don't know. Something I thought about doing, so I've been doing it. We often find that we've been doing better than we've been feeling. This is crucial. It's one of my favorite parts, because it's that realization, right? So, and maybe for an earthling, this might be a little different, I guess, but for a guy like me, I'll walk into a meeting and I'm sharing, you know, man, life has been really hard lately. I'm struggling, you know, maybe I even thought about using, and it's getting hard, right? And then somebody will point out, well, okay, that's rough, but you just called your sponsor on the way to the meeting to share honestly about that. You just came to a meeting. You just shared openly and honestly in the meeting that that's not what you want to do, and that you have been having those thoughts. Like you're getting rid of the secret that could eat you up and fester until you do it. It's like you picked up your step 2 days ago and were writing answers to it. You prayed this morning. It's like all these things that I've done are great, right? Like I'm living all the exact right things you would want somebody to do. I just don't, the feelings haven't caught up yet. They don't match up yet.
Yeah, and I mean, that's where I think the normal people feeling stuff, you know, comes in. It's like regular people wake up some days and just feel blah, or don't feel good, or, you know, maybe have bad days. Like that's not unique to us.
Right.
And I think, you know, that again, when we're caught up in the self-centeredness, it's so hard to see outside of ourselves. We think that we're the only ones, that we're the only thing that feels the way we feel, suffers the way we suffer, you know.
Do you think that the earthlings, do you think like, so they might have a feeling, but they're able to just step back and say, it's a feeling. Like all I'm going to do is get up and go to work today. I know I don't feel like it. I know I'm in kind of a bad mood. I'll try maybe not to talk to as many people so I'm not rude, because I know I have an attitude. I only got 2 hours of sleep. Do they just do that naturally? Like, because I just start thinking my world's falling apart if I'm feeling off, right? Like, I don't realize that I'm still living okay.
Well, I was going to say exactly that. Yes, or at least I work with a few Earth people that aren't addicts, and they'll all have that. Yeah, I didn't sleep well last night. I'm feeling awful bitchy today. They'll say stuff like that, and that's just normal. And they just recognize, like, okay, today's not going to be a great day. I'll get through it. Tomorrow will be better.
Right.
For me, it's like I got to give myself a whole freaking pep talk to get through all that shit.
Yeah, and I don't think we're too far off from Earth people. I honestly really don't. I know we have this debate frequently about like how different we are, and I really don't think we are that different. But I will say it does seem like we have these really strong feelings about our feelings, right? It's not enough to just feel something in the first place. Then we like judge and qualify that beyond that. And I'm not saying Earth people don't do that. I think it really is a mental health thing. And I know some people who have never, ever gotten into drugs that still have those kind of judgmental thoughts of themselves. So maybe it's like just a level of, how much people do it or not. I don't know. It's really interesting though, that we can't just have a feeling and accept it. It's like having a feeling and then judging and having another feeling about the feeling and then getting mad that I'm judging the feeling. And it's like, when the fuck does that end?
Yeah. And I mean, there's something to addiction where, like, I think everything's supposed to feel good all the time.
Yes.
I think everything's supposed to feel good. It's supposed to be good. I'm supposed to be happy. And if that's not going on, then something is fucking wrong.
Yes.
And something's got to be fixed.
You mean that's not correct? So, interestingly enough, here's the next quote. We need this step even when we're feeling good and when things are going well. Good feelings are new to us, and we need to nurture them. In times of trouble, we can try the things that worked during the good times. The good times can also be a trap. The danger is that we may forget that our first priority is to stay clean. For us, recovery is more than just pleasure. I've missed that line the 14 times I've read this. I still think recovery is supposed to feel good, damn it, all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's about doing these things regularly, right? It's about praying and meditating on a daily basis. It's about taking a 10-step inventory. It's about showing up in a 12-step act of service, even when I don't feel like it, as long as nothing else in my life is in the way of it. It's this vigilance to do these steps. Recovery is not feeling good all the fucking time. Recovery is the vigilance to do these things over and over again, because ultimately, if you look at the graph on a whole, I feel a lot better normally, right? Maybe that doesn't all take place on, Wednesday, the 30th of September. Maybe that's the day I feel like shit. But in general, most of my days are better because I've put in this vigilant action regularly. And I'm not criticizing or judging any of you right now. So if you're taking this personal, I'm truly sorry. That maybe you should look at that. But I mean, I don't live this vigilant perfectly all the time for sure. And I pay the price for it. And I feel it when I do.
Yeah. And it's again difficult to do any of this like consistently every day all the time. It takes a lot of discipline, and if you notice in there it says, we got to watch out in the good times, and we got to watch out in the bad times, and we got to watch out in all the times in between. And it just reminded me, like, one of my favorite sayings, I think it's in the second tradition in the NA basic text. It says we are mismanagers and not one of us is consistently capable of making good decisions. And it's talking about, trusting in a group conscience and a power greater than ourselves. And, I am part of that. We are mismanagers and not capable of consistently making good decisions. I am not capable of consistently making good decisions in my own life.
Right.
I don't necessarily get better at it because I'm doing better, and I don't get better at it because I'm doing worse. Doesn't seem to matter. At any time, that self-centered piece just creeps right back in there, and I will make some bad choices. I'm glad they point this out. I don't know that it ever helped me any. I don't know that I got to like a good time or a good feeling in my life, and I was like, oh yeah, I got to do that 10th step because they reminded me of that. Like, I probably still forgot all about it, but I do think it's hugely important. And it's very strange that for whatever reason, when life goes well,
I tend to just run with it and it feels good and I don't have to do anything right now. It's like, oh man, I don't need to work on anything. It's going great. Like I work on shit when it's broken, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is, but there's definitely times when things are going well and I feel good that I'm actually like, it's like going 120 miles an hour into the brick wall. Like it's coming, right? That brick wall's coming. I'm going to hit it. And I know that. And I just sometimes can't stop myself.
Yeah. And I guess at least the way I would explain this would be like dieting. Let's take dieting, for example. If you just get on a diet and eat pretty decent, for a lot of days, you don't have to go on some big giant crash course diet when you've gotten 70 pounds overweight and now you're in like heart disease mode. You know what I mean? And this, for the way that I apply it in my life, is like the daily maintenance part. Like, hey, what kind of food am I putting in my body now? What kind of nourishment am I giving to myself on a regular basis? And if I'm not paying attention before I know it, I'm in a really unhealthy place.
And there you go. Hopefully you didn't turn this podcast off before that, because that right there is the shot. You're going to work steps 1 through 9 are cutting all that shitty food out of your life drastically and drastically lowering your calorie intake,
Crash
right?
diet.
And then when you get to 10, you don't just start loading up on fucking ice cream again, right? you got to eat some fruit, some vegetables, some nuts. You got to take in the right stuff on a daily basis so that you don't have to go back to that, I'm only going to eat lettuce for a week diet, because that sucked ass.
And then you get into 11 and 12 where it convinces you that vegetables and healthy nuts and fruits are all that you should be eating because that's good for you.
Oh, my God, yeah. Wow. Don't ever eat ice cream. In fact, 11 tells you that you won't even want to eat ice cream.
Right.
Of course I do. With hot fudge. So that kind of ties into this one. The more we work this step, the less we will need the corrective part of this step. This step is a great tool for avoiding grief before we bring it on ourselves. We monitor our feelings, emotions, fantasies, and actions. By constantly looking at ourselves, we are able to avoid repeating the actions that make us feel bad. I think that's just crucial, right? I don't have to continue doing things that don't make me feel good. And that's kind of, if we want to stick with the diet thing, like I generally have felt good in times when I've eaten healthier and whether I needed to lose a little weight or just eating healthier, even like my mental health symptoms felt better. And I don't know, maybe I make all that shit up, but it really felt that way when I was in it. I was like, God, I'm not half as anxious about like what I normally feel anxious about, which is everything. This is nice. And so if we just keep the actions going, right? If we can keep tabs on what we're doing and say, when I got here, here's the main thing. When I got here, I would just feel like shit at the end of my day. And I wasn't really sure what part of my day caused that, right?
Right.
Like, was it when I talked bad to my mother? Was it when I was rude to my friend? Was it when somebody stopped by to show me their new car and I didn't give a fuck and I rushed them off? Like, I couldn't even tell you. But now it's the ability to kind of see each situation one at a time and say, okay, yeah, when I do that, when I'm not listening to my son because I'm trying to read a news article on my phone and he's just yapping the fuck away about Roblox and I'm like, I don't give a fuck, right? Like, right. I don't feel good after I do that, right? I do feel good after I take the time to like set my phone down and I'm like, hey buddy, let's talk about that for a few minutes. And then I leave and go read the article on my phone somewhere else where he won't distract me. But it's knowing which ones do which for me so that I can do the ones that feel good more often.
Yeah. Or recognizing too, that sometimes it's not the things going on in our life that make us feel, necessarily good or bad. It's like some days I wake up and I just don't feel great. And my intuition is, I don't feel good, so I got to do something or fix something or get something to make me feel better.
Right.
And sometimes just recognizing, nope, I'm just having a day and this will pass and I don't need to go buy something new or, eat a bunch of bad food or do some stupid thing to make me feel better. I can just sit with it and feel it.
Yeah, and damn feelings. Supposed to be felt. I hate that. So, and then the last one I had was, We need to remember that everyone makes mistakes. We will never be perfect. However, we can accept ourselves by using step 10. By continuing a personal inventory, we are set free in the here and now from ourselves and the past. We no longer justify our existence. This step allows us to be ourselves. And I thought that was a nice closing for it. I mean, that's what I've heard, at least in meetings. You know, the ultimate goal of recovery is to figure out who you are and do it on purpose. And it's like, that's when I heard that the first time, I was like, you don't fucking want me to be myself. Trust me. Like, that's a terrible idea. But that is mostly my goal today. I still, there's still a part of me that doesn't like parts of me and doesn't want to accept them and work on them. Right. It's like, I just keep wanting to pretend that isn't real. Right. If I just ignore it long enough and look the other way, it'll go away or something. But most of me I like. Like, there's a lot of parts of me I do like. I mean, I would have never come out and done a podcast before in my life. I'd have been like, oh, hell no, people will judge me and I'm terrible. And now it's like, fuck it. This is what I got, right? Either people listen or they don't.
And that's, you know, the point of the inventories we do, you know, before this back in 4, and then getting into 6 and 7 and realizing, like, what are defects and what things do I need to cut out of my life, and then what things are good in my life that are worth hanging on to or nurturing and developing in myself. You know, we figure those things out through the inventory process through 6 and 7, and then we get to this point. I think especially in long-term recovery, like, my goals and aspirations and things I like to do have changed over the 20 years that I've been clean. You know, so now I can take an inventory and say, well, what things do I like to do today? You know, it's not the same things that I like to do before. It's different now. And I can look at that a little bit, take ownership of it.
Right. So just a couple things, ideas my buddy Jack had. He said prompt means we don't want to let too many unaddressed wrongdoings accumulate. He talks about the principle seems to be integrity, basically. Do the right thing even if no one's looking, because we're the ones that feel the toll of that at the end of the day, like we talked about. And so I wanted to take this back to, you talked about in 6, like, or 6 and 7, I guess, that, like, I have this shitty furniture in my house, right? and I can't do anything about it until I seek something bigger than me, right? Until I ask a friend to come over and help me move it or help me restore it, or I go and buy new furniture, like whatever it takes, that shitty furniture is there until I work 6 and 7, right? And so now we have this nice furniture in our house, and in 10, like, we got to do the upkeep, right? I got to dust when the dust accrues. Right. I got to get the wet vac out when I spill the fucking iced tea on the floor and the carpet, right? Or the couch cushion. And I got to do this upkeep because in 11, I'm going to ask this higher power to come stay with me in my house, right? I'm going to invite him in, and I want the house to look in order. And that's the point of 10, is so that we can keep this house in order, right? So I liked your analogy in 6. I was like, I got to find a way to bring that back in, God damn it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Well, and we talked about, you know, last week a little bit. For me, like, I don't as much formally work the 11th step out of the IP nowadays, and I think a big part of that is meditation. And meditation helps me. It was, and I hate to say, it was in the last thing that you read before the final closing of the 10th step, you know, that one saying in there where it talks about when I'm sort of living in the here and now, living in the present, taking like active awareness into how I'm treating people, what I'm doing with my life, what's going on in the here and now, you know, I'm less likely to need to go back and make amends. You know,
right.
I'm less likely to get myself into trouble when I'm actively paying attention to what's going on in my everyday life. And for me, meditating helps me to do that. You know, when I'm actively practicing meditation on a regular basis, I'm way more aware of what's going on around me, what I'm doing, how I'm acting.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to one of those other quotes that was in there about stop. Like, the first thing to do is stop and allow yourself the privilege of thinking. I definitely feel that I can go through so many days and weeks and sometimes months and not ever stop to think of anything. Honestly, like
Right.
It's just like, oh God, I got to do this tomorrow, and then I'm trying to schedule. What am I going to eat for dinner this week? I got to get that from the grocery store, and there's so many random things to think about, one after the other. I don't stop and think about that if I'm not taking the time to actively meditate. If I'm not taking the time to actively answer step 10 questions, I don't stop. There's no stopping. What do you mean stop? There's no off button. Let's keep going. There's more to
Right.
do, right? I mean, we talk about this all the time. There's only 24 hours in a day, and I got to get more done. And most people are only getting 6 hours sleep at this point. And nah, man, we got it. I remember talking to a guy, David, in fact, and he said that it was funny. I mentioned something about it's hard to have time to meditate, and he's like a lifelong meditator or whatever. And he was like, it's interesting how when I take that time in the morning to meditate, I always seem to have more time afterwards. And I'm like, fuck you and your Buddhist shit. God
Yeah,
damn
that
it.
must
It's
be a
true,
Buddhist
though.
thing because my previous sponsor told me a similar, very, very similar thing. So it
I
must
think
be
it's
one of
true. I just hate it when I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm mad that somebody else is capable of it. I'm like, I know. But yeah, when we slow down, everything else doesn't feel so rushed. And so I think that's the goal of that. I don't know, man. I think that's I think we've done a thorough 10th step here today, Billy. I don't know any more that I could say about it.
Oh, now it's motivating me to be like, I should just take my IP back out and start reading it every day.
Yeah, I'm not there. I just got to meditate, really. No, I do. I think a good meditation practice really, not that this can, I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to be cheap. I'm trying to say they can be done at the same time. Maybe they can't. I
No,
don't
not
know.
for me. They're two completely different things. The goal of meditation for me is to just sit with awareness and not
Right.
think or focus or be directed towards anything.
I'm like, if I'm sitting with awareness, I'm going to notice if anything comes up when I'm acting wrong. Like, it's just going to arise.
Well, that's just
I'll be in
thinking.
tune.
You're just
I
thinking.
know. I'm just full of shit. I'm trying to be lazy. That's all it is. So, anyway, that's what we got this week. That was the 10th step. Feel free to email or Twitter or anywhere else we are, Instagram, Facebook. Reach out. Tell us about your 10th step wisdom or experience or anything you'd like to share with us, or if you have ideas for topics. Definitely reach out. And somebody go on the damn Anchor site and leave a voice message for us to play on a recording, because I don't know how to do that, and it sounds interesting. And beyond that, I think we're looking to talk about, we're going to talk to somebody about ACA next week. So that should be fun. So stay safe out there, and we'll see you next week. If you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to share it with people you think might benefit from the conversation. Look us up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to join the conversation also, and share your ideas with us. We'd love to hear it.